intimacy. And first of all, I like to encourage couples to take note of their strengths and to talk about how to build on those strengths. If we start with a positive and start with a strong foundation, we can move forward in a way that is different than if we start with our deficits or our weaknesses. And secondly, being on the same page and using the same terminology is very important. Oftentimes, men and women have different ideas of the definitions between, or the definitions of sex, sexuality, intimacy, romance, and then also between self-concept, self-esteem, and self-image. And so we want to clarify those as we're talking as a couple to make sure that we're of the same mind when we're addressing these issues related to intimacy. And then begin to prepare to expand your sexual and your intimate repertoire now, before things may become a little difficult. As you know, a lot of times with the body changing and hormones changing and fatigue levels changing and so forth, it's not always as inviting to continue with the same mode of sexual contact. And many times we can explore other options and even learn some new things about each other and learn what can be satisfying to one another. Maybe it's something as simple as discovering ways to touch each other that you've never done so that you've never done so in the past, and you may find very meaningful to each other, such as a foot rub or a back rub. And those are things that you may think, well, those are common to almost all couples, but surprisingly we find that that's not necessarily the case. Be creative. Think about different venues, different times. Think about simplifying things. Go back to your mindset as perhaps as a teenager. The first kiss. Think about the simplicity of that. Sometimes we make sexuality and sex and intimacy very complicated, and it need not be. And I encourage couples to address issues which may have been there for a while and needed to be addressed even before you receive a diagnosis of cancer. And that may be somewhat hard to do given that you're now faced with the new diagnosis of cancer, which might have been fairly shocking to you. You're focused more on the cancer, but before you move forward any further, it might be helpful to stop and address old issues that may not have been resolved. And it's a good motivator. Cancer can actually be a good motivator. We find that with our patients here in the hospital oftentimes, that it's a place in their lives. It's kind of a marker along the path of life that our patients often end up using to clear up old issues and to free themselves up from negative or toxic emotions which may have been there for a while. And many times unresolved issues between couples can give rise to toxic emotions, and we know that those can affect the immune system in an adverse way. And so we're very much involved with our patients in helping them to free up their bodies and their minds and their spirits from toxic emotions that can impact them in an adverse way. We want them to be able to use every ounce of their being for the healing process. And reaffirming our commitment to one another is very important. Being very clear on that commitment is even more important. Some people say that they don't really want to know if there's bad news in this area. And actually, I encourage patients to go for it, so to speak, in this area. It's very helpful, I think, to know where you stand with one another. And, sometimes people think, well, that may precipitate a crisis, but that might actually be okay. I think it's very helpful to know and be very clear on where you stand with one another. What is the degree of your commitment? Just how strong is it? What does it involve? And, if you find out that the commitment is not what you thought it would be, then we can help you to build a resource, a support network, and help you to strengthen relationships that you do have that are working for you, that are supportive for you. And then on the flip side of the coin, help you to celebrate the commitment that you do have. Now, what do men most want to know about intimacy during the treatment journey? We know that men have many questions about what is ahead, and that's normal. They want to know how things will be different with sex and with intimacy and with romance. And they want to know if women will be more sensitive physically. Will sexual activity need to be limited by medical necessity? And if not, is it possible that a woman's physical condition may cause intercourse to be painful? And if so, how long will this be the case? These are the kinds of questions that men often have, but might avoid bringing up to avoid looking self-centered. And even so, they may avoid asking for sex, even if the woman doesn't feel like it, because they may assume that it would be inappropriate given that she's going through cancer treatment. So I encourage communication to take place around these issues and to address maybe even the awkwardness that a couple might feel about these questions that come up around sexuality. Sometimes men say that they are concerned that the woman will feel rejected if they don't bring up the issue of sex or affection or romance or intimacy. And so one of the keys I talk about with couples is when you're feeling that awkwardness about these issues, that's the time to break the ice and bring it up. Oftentimes men are wondering, what will the woman be open to? What will make her happy? And those are good questions for discussion. And those are some of the questions that you shouldn't be hesitant to actually bring to the table. Those are questions that healthy couples ideally should be able to discuss. So for most people, cancer and dealing with cancer or cancer itself is very unexpected. And so when we're dealing with the unexpected, again, we want to tap into the strengths that we have as individuals and as a couple. Talk about the strengths that kicked in for you during previously challenging times. What strengths seem to help you through previously challenging times when you encountered a curveball in life? What are the things that worked for you as a couple? Take a deep breath and remind each other that you're in this together as a team and you'll handle things together. Many times, even though couples are deeply in love or deeply care for one another, they go into their own corners for various reasons and try to go on this journey down separate lanes, so to speak, instead of proceeding down this pathway together. They're somewhat together, but they're not really as together as they could be. And I'm not necessarily talking about hand holding and increased affection, but it's more of a mindset that we're in this together, and that's very important, just to have that discussion with each other, remind each other that you are a team and that we're not going to let cancer split us up, so to speak. I'm not talking about splitting up the relationship permanently. I'm talking about more emotional distance. And we really have to work not to let cancer do that, and not to let the cancer journey put any distance between us. I also encourage couples to be creative. I alluded to this earlier. It's a time to draw on our ability to come up with great solutions when we're facing unusual problems. Cancer can present some very unusual challenges, and this is the time to tap into the creative domain. Maybe try some solutions that you've never tried before. Stretch your thinking a little bit. Think outside the box, so to speak, as they say. Talk about possibilities with each other. What if we tried this? What if we tried that? I'm not just talking about in regard to the sexuality or the intimate relationship, but in managing the cancer journey altogether. And then practicing good stress management is so important. Good stress management, of course, is good for all of us any day of the week and any time in our lives, but particularly with all that comes with starting out on a cancer journey and proceeding down that pathway of treatment and all that it entails. Good stress management can, again, help the immune system to stay stronger. We know that from research studies. And practicing good stress management can help us stay focused more on the healing process. And that's very important. You know, when we are under a lot of stress, well, life is full of stressors. One of my favorite trite sayings, it's kind of on the negative side, I guess, but it's kind of funny in a way, is, you know, life is full of flat tires, and it is. But, you know, good stress management is that we have a plan when we have a flat tire, so to speak. You know, we have a plan for dealing with the unexpected. And that could be that simply we regroup, we talk to one another, and we acknowledge that we don't know what the next step is, but we are going to talk about it, and we're going to come up with something, and we're in this together, and we're going to see it through. Sometimes it's just a matter of regrouping. But back to the good stress management basics. Good stress management basics include building in some cushion. That includes time-wise in your schedule, not scheduling yourself back to back, not pushing yourself too hard, making sure that you build in time to allow the family to have some together time, allow the family time to process what's going on, which is not always possible. Once you get a diagnosis, sometimes that fast-moving river just carries you on down it, and you don't really have the time that you want or need to process all that's happening around you, much less have time for everyone in the family to process things emotionally and to prepare for what's ahead. But as best we can, decluttering our lives is another good stress management technique. It seems like today our lives are so cluttered by so many good intentioned things, and we have to really work hard to declutter our lives, much less our houses and our cars and the rooms in which we live our lives. It's amazing how all the wonderful and good things that come our way are exactly those things. They become those things which clutter our lives. And so it's no longer that we so much have to choose between what's so helpful and what's not so helpful. It's more that we have to choose between what's helpful and what's very, very helpful. So that's kind of a different challenge than maybe you faced before. And then to deal with the unexpected, I encourage couples to stand back and look for the bigger picture. What is the meaning of this whole experience of going through the cancer journey? Well, why have you been allowed to go through this journey? Or is this for you more of a checklist of something that has hit you in life and you just simply take care of it and be done and you're on your way? And so this has different meaning for different couples. And perhaps as a couple, you could talk about this and decide, well, for you, does this have more meaning? Is this a time for you to do some changing of your priorities? Or is this the time that you want to make a meaning out of this for your lives, for your family? Is this the time that you want to do some reevaluation in your life? Perhaps decide that you want to practice some things such as an attitude of gratitude that you may not have promoted so much previously. And many times our patients decide that they want to implement some changes in their lives, actually in their way of living. And I applaud them for this. It's really wonderful to see people embrace the challenges of a cancer journey and turn it into a positive, as difficult as that may be. And growing stronger through the struggle is one of those positive things that can happen with a cancer journey. We can determine not to let cancer become the center of our lives, or of our family's lives, or our lives as a couple. And I like to say that we have to work hard not to let the big C become the center of our lives, but keep it the little c. Cancer has a way of creeping in and taking over our lives in every single way. You know, it becomes the focus of every conversation with everybody all day, every day. And we have to take charge of that. And we have to determine that we will work to keep cancer out of the center of our lives to the best of our ability. Now, some days that's not totally possible. But I do think it's a daily battle. And so that's a goal I encourage patients to set for themselves and couples to set for themselves. And try to maintain some semblance of normalcy for yourselves as a couple. Try to keep having that date night. You may not feel like eating out, but you might feel like maybe taking a slow walk together, even if it's just, out for 15 minutes. Perhaps it's going to the park and sitting on the bench together for a short time. Or maybe it's renting one of your favorite sitcoms and laughing together for a half hour. And then next, tune into one another on a spiritual level. As you go through challenges of life together and the challenges of a cancer journey, understanding where each person is spiritually can be very helpful. And trying to understand what is available in a spiritual realm to help you get through this process is very, very key. To be able to understand the role that spirituality can play in your journey with cancer can be very helpful. And again, building on your strengths is important in helping us to get through the treatment journey. Celebrating your growth through the trials of life is something to mark. We want to mark that occasion. It's something to be happy about, how we've grown. Not that it's easy. These fiery trials which we've experienced, but the stronger vessel that we've become on the other side of this is cause for celebration. As we come out having gone through the fire, so to speak, it's wonderful to be a stronger vessel. And sometimes in our weakness, we begin to experience strength that we've never experienced before, and that can be a very transformative process. And then finally, becoming encouragers to one another or to another couple who are now beginning their journey is a way to begin to give out of yourselves to other people who are facing what you've just faced. And I really think that's a very good indicator that, as a couple, that you've grown and you've begun to celebrate what you've had, and as you begin to give to others. And I know that it takes recovery time sometimes. It's sort of like, licking your wounds after a lot of a long, hard journey, so to speak. But as we start to give out of ourselves to others and out of, our own need sometimes too, we can, I think, complete the healing process. And I really enjoy hearing the stories that couples share with me oftentimes when they come back and they say, they're back for their 3-month or 6-month scan or their 1-year scan or follow-up, and they're sharing how, it's interesting that so many other couples have come across their paths and they've been able to be encouragers, or, at least someone that they can, other couples can talk to, and they've been able to to help them start along their journey or move along on their journey with cancer. That brings us to the conclusion of the presentation part, and so now, Kelly, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, Kelly. This is Kelly. Can you all hear me? Okay. Just need one wave. Okay, good. Thank you. Um, Rhonda, thank you so much for that presentation. We really appreciate your insight and your knowledge as it relates to intimacy and cancer, and know that you've had a lot of experience in working with couples. We will start the question and answer session at this time. So if you have a question, please type your question in the chat box, and Rhonda is available to answer those questions. And also, if you have a question that you may want to ask privately, we will provide an email address for you to email your questions as well. Okay, the questions are coming. I see everyone is typing. So we'll give them a minute, Rhonda. I see 3 people are typing at this time. Okay. Okay, a comment from Florence. She says this has been really informative. Thank you. Okay, we have multiple attendees that are typing, so we'll give them a minute, Rhonda, to ask a question. Is there anything you may want to add to a couple of the slides while we're waiting on questions? You can unmute your microphone.
Okay, I will add a thought that expands on something I shared about gratitude earlier. The study that was done a few years ago among patients who survived longer, patients with cancer, that is, who survived longer, there was a common thread that was noted by researchers among these patients, and the common threads were actually 3 in number, and it included a practice of gratitude, having an attitude of gratitude, consistently being thankful, grateful, expressing that gratitude to one another, to God, to for things that we wouldn't normally stop and take the time to be thankful for, and also having a living in a kind of a spirit of forgiveness mode, and letting go of toxic unforgiveness that keeps us tethered in a way that's not healthy for the cells of our body and the immune system. Making a decision that even if someone has wronged us, even if someone doesn't deserve to be forgiven by us, that choosing to sever that tie of unforgiveness can actually free a person up and impact their health. And then finally, determining to keep laughter in your lives. Those were the 3 common threads among patients with cancer who had a longer survival rate, and I think that's very significant. Those are 3 things that we can easily incorporate into our lives on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. Our first question is, how does a woman deal with the emotions of her partner leaving after a cancer diagnosis?
Acknowledging the grief is certainly the first thing that a woman would benefit from doing, and not ignoring the grief, not ignoring the hurt feelings, possibly anger, and then immediately begin to call on people who have offered their support. When people say, "Let me know what I can do to help," you have to be willing to do that. You do that selectively. I encourage people to be careful who they take up on that offer, but nonetheless, there are so many people who are willing to help and willing to offer support. And so I encourage women to get busy, to pick out a few people that they have reason to think these people might be trustworthy and might be there for the long haul, and begin to share with them what's happening. Begin to call up on them for support. We are not meant to do life alone, and we're certainly not meant to do cancer alone.
Thank you, Rhonda. The next question is, why is there a lot of dryness? And I'm going to assume vaginal dryness.
Well, that usually relates to hormones, and not being a medical person, a doctor or nurse, etc., I would defer that question to one of our medical staff. But most of the books that in the material literature that you read on that addresses that from a hormonal perspective. And I would encourage that person to talk with their OB-GYN doctor or their oncologist. And if either of those persons, doctors, are not willing to address it, or only address it minimally and won't stay with it and track it with the patient, then I would encourage the patient to seek out additional medical help for that.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. The next comment question is, what if after 4 years I still cannot give of my new body because it is a no-win? I feel nothing in my breast region, which was always my on button.
Okay, I could not entirely hear the question, but I think I caught it. If the breast was the on button, quote unquote, in your sexual intimacy, and that's no longer, you're no longer able to experience any feeling physically in the breast, then what do you do with that? Is that the question? Or what do you do about that?
Correct, that is the question.
Okay, well, that gives a great opportunity for some exploration for that couple, to spend some time exploring other areas of the body which may just have the same level of stimulation or maybe just as interesting. And I have known couples to find out things about each other, couples that have been married 30 and 40 years, finding out areas of the body which they found to be stimulating to one another, both to give and to receive touch. So opening up new areas of exploration is probably key in a situation like this.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. The next question is, I just had both my breasts removed and they found cancer in the other breast. So, okay, so now he feels he might hurt me. How can I deal with this issue?
Well, I would first ask a couple who was in my office for counseling on this, what has the woman's response been to him when he says, honey, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt you? And many times I find out that they've not really had a very in-depth discussion. It's more that they've danced around the issue. So if there indeed is no physical pain, if there indeed is no way that she could be damaged physically from this, then I would want to have a very open discussion about that and make that very clear. Sometimes I find that the real issue is something different. The real issue sometimes is that a man feels just a little awkward in the situation. He just feels not at as ease as he once did because things look different. It's not always that he really feels that he might hurt his wife, although that does occur a lot. I mean, men do feel that often. But I would say, if a couple is really communicating about this and there really is no pain involved, then maybe there is another issue there. Maybe just the man's discomfort with the situation.
Thank you, Rhonda. The next question. I'm a lung and breast cancer survivor, and this was a great outline. It solidified my current need for general discussion conversations. In Houston, where are there discussion groups for coping, growing for survivors as opposed to fundraising efforts? Actually, this is a specific question related. You can contact our office, Ida, and we can provide you with a list of local support groups and also groups that are support groups that are provided through our network here at Sisters Network. Okay, I hope that answers your question. And we have someone typing at this moment. Hold on just a moment. I also wanted to address a couple of questions that were typed. Yes, the presentation will be available. Uh, Tomorrow we'll have the link available on the YouTube site, and it will also be sent with the evaluation that we ask that you complete. Okay, I'm still waiting. There's one more typing. Okay. And also, the Breast Health Collaborative of Texas has an online resource tool for support groups as well, and they're one of our collaborative partners. They can assist with that as far as the online support groups. Okay. And our last comment, if there are no more, we have Kim wanted to say thank you so much for this presentation, and we received several thank yous stating that this was a wonderful presentation and they will definitely share the information with their partners. And we have one more question. Actually, I have now multiple questions coming up. The next question is, what if my partner has moved on and feels I should exit the cancer community as well and go back to life the way it once was? I don't feel like life can ever be as it once was.
That's a very good question. That brings up a very good point. When you go through something as life-changing as cancer, yes, you can move on to a certain degree. You can move on to a great degree. But the reality is that it now constitutes part of who you are. That experience is part of your life. It does not have to define who you are, but it is the reality of what you have experienced, and your experiences make up who you are. So I would want to know, what is his discomfort with this? Is it that you being affiliated with the breast cancer community to him still represents sickness and disability and unpleasant things, or is it that is he thinking there's too much time being spent away from him and he just wants life to get back to normal, so he doesn't see it as so much of a ongoing social support system for you or an opportunity for you to give back to your community and to your sisters. So I'd want to explore what's the meaning for him. I think, for you, the meaning is probably, I'm guessing it's probably positive and helpful. So I'd encourage you to talk to him about what's the meaning for him. What does it represent to him?
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. And her response is he doesn't want to be affiliated with it. It is depressing to him. I find comfort there in helping newly diagnosed support for my own extended journey. That's her response to your comment, Rhonda.
Okay. Well, I can understand how, his experience with the cancer journey can leave a negative impact, but you cannot be, we can choose not to be responsible for someone else's emotional responses. We have that option. We have to let each other be responsible for our own emotions. And these sound like separate issues, and maybe he could get some encouragement or support from maybe some men that had gone through this, or maybe a counselor in your community. But this sounds like it's a positive thing for you, and it doesn't necessarily have to overlap with your, what I call, coupleness. And speaking of couples, by the way, may I interject one thing here? Being Valentine's tomorrow and thinking about couples and romance, I like to encourage couples to um, take some time out every day if possible, but certainly at least once a week to have some couple time where they do not talk about cancer and they do not talk about issues or problems. And it's amazing how difficult some couples find that to be, because oftentimes it's usually the woman who's thinking, oh, great, we have dinner out tonight away from the kids, or we have some downtime, or we're going away for the weekend, and we can talk. Finally, we get some great time to talk to one another, just about us. And the man is often thinking, oh, well, fun time, or, downtime. And what we commonly find is that the woman is thinking about, oh, a great time to talk about issues and problems, and we can solve them, and we can work on them. What a delight. This is fantastic. And the man is thinking about a completely different togetherness, a completely different type of togetherness, rather. And so I like to give couples the assignment of at least once a day, even if it's just 15 or 30 minutes a day, having some time, even if it's just sitting on the sofa holding hands and watching your favorite sitcom together, where you have, which is not really interactive, by the way, but at least it's something together, where you have absolutely no conversation about issues or problems or cancer. And certainly if you're able to go out on a date of some kind, um, he needs to experience, and likewise we do too. We need to experience time with each other that is nothing but positive time. And it's amazing how challenging that can be for couples to do, because we want to capitalize upon that treasure of time together to resolve issues. But the research shows that couples who've stayed together the longest, this is another common thread that research has shown, this is just marriage and family research. Couples that have stayed together the longest, one of the common threads is that they do have that couple time where they do not talk about issues or problems. They have some recreational time, relaxing time, or even just neutral time together. So just some food for thought.
Thank you, Rhonda. There was one question that I skipped. I want to go back to that question.
Okay.
And the question is, if your partner is in denial and afraid that you might die, how do you move past that to go back to the intimacy?
Well, that's a common concern that we talk about with our patients. We do often see people distance from one another because of the fear that they may die. And so if we can actually bring that fear to the surface instead of avoiding it, then we can make some headway there. But oftentimes one person feels like, well, if I talk about the possibility of them dying, then that's going to be very insensitive of me. That's going to scare them. It's going to, bring forth that reality. The words I speak will bring forth that reality. Well, you know, I do believe in the power of the tongue for sure, but I also not so sure that we have that much power in our lives to, bring us to that point before it's time, before our time. So I encourage couples to go ahead and talk about death and dying. I always say we could go out onto the freeway here next to the hospital and get hit by a truck. We could be walking in a park and get hit by a fast-moving bicycle by accident. And the reality of life is that we don't know our day or our time, but I think it's normal to prepare for that time. It's normal for couples to prepare their wills. It's normal for couples to talk about what would we do with the children, if one of us passed away or both of us passed away. So I try to normalize these things for couples and try to open up the possibility of talking about, well, what if this happened or what if that happened? And so then if we can get the conversation into the normal arena and help people to start feeling more at ease about talking about these kinds of issues, then the distance seems to close and they seem more capable of resuming at least some level of intimacy.
Thank you, Rhonda. That was a very good question. And our last question is, with all that my body has gone through, I do not feel attracted to my mate anymore. Therefore, I hold back with intimacy. How do I deal with this issue?
Well, the key there is the messages that we have spoken to ourselves have gotten down into the depths of our being and our souls. And, you know, the thoughts that we tell ourselves, the words that we rehearse in our minds and um, take root. And we have to speak something different to ourselves. We have to speak what we know to be true. What do we know to be true about who we are, who we were created to be? What do we know to be true about our gifts and our purpose in life? What do we know about who we were before cancer struck? What do we know about our potential? What do we know about what others love about us? We go back to the things we know to be true. And yes, we've changed. The cancer journey has changed us somewhat, and hopefully for the better. And yes, some things may not necessarily be for the better, so to speak. Some people may feel that their body image is not changed for the better, which in many cases is true. And so the challenge is to identify the roots of what we are speaking to ourselves on a daily basis and not let that take hold. Refuse to let those messages take root in us. We must take control of the thoughts that we rehearse on a daily basis and replace those with something that's edifying, something that's uplifting, something that's encouraging, something that's true. And as we begin to speak those things to ourselves and to push out all other messages that are not helpful, that are not edifying, that are not true, then it begins to take root in our being, in our soul, and even in our cells. Our cells, the cells of our body, respond to the words that we rehearse in our minds. And I believe that as we begin to be transformed by the renewal of our minds, that we can begin to be free to relate to the man in our lives.
Well, Rhonda, thank you so much. And that is a wonderful end to the webinar, today's webinar, Intimacy and Cancer. And again, we want to thank you so much for participating and taking time out of your busy schedule to participate and to support Sisters Network in this effort to educate our community on different topics.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Ladies, thank you all for joining us today. And if you have additional questions, you can email those questions to Jessica Dubois, Key Market Development Coordinator at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And her email is on the screen, jessica.dubois@ctca-hope.com. And again, just a couple of announcements. We want to invite you again back for Webinar Wednesday on March the 13th. Nutrition and exercise. You can register today. Staying energized and staying fit. That will be presented by Jason Stevens from Cancer Treatment Centers of America. So we're really excited about that webinar as well. And that's Wednesday, March the 13th, same time, 12 p.m. Central. And if you have any other questions related to Sisters Network or our programs and services, please visit our website at sistersnetworkinc.org. And if you're in the Houston area, we're located at 2922 Rosedale Street, Houston, Texas, 77004. And you can always give us a call at 866-781-1808. And of course, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and you can also access our YouTube, which is Sisters Network Inc. Again, thank you all so much, and have a great day.